Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar. This is one of our Tuesday evening webinars. In fact, today we've had two webinars. We did one this morning and we're doing one this evening. And in these webinars, we do several things, but what we try to do, and one of the things we try to do, is get a presenter who's involved in a particular area, their profession, their passion, their ideas, to talk about it, and for us to engage with them in a discussion. And they usually do, as we will today, do a short presentation and then have a discussion. And in the webinar we're doing today, we've got Dhruv Patel. And Dhruv Patel belongs and started the Nisai Group, where he works with children who are often excluded, who don't go through formal education because of one reason or the other, they're excluded away from that. And we've done a webinar with him already on that, and we're going to do some other activities throughout the year, we hope, on that, because he's developed some innovative ways of working with those children. But this webinar tonight is not just on that. It's about something else we've also been involved on, and that's the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Have a meeting coming up in London Met next Monday on that, looking at Goal 5, which is on gender. Sustainable Development Goals are about improving education, improving equality, improving water quality, improving our environment. It's about 16 goals, 17 goals, all to be implemented ideally by 2030. But how do we get people to know about it, and how do we involve young people? Now, Dhruv is a great believer that SDGs can be taught in school. That can both enhance education, that it can enhance the interest in the children, and it can get them to know about global concerns in a very meaningful way. And he's going to tell us how he's done that, and tell us about how you can involve young people in SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, in schools, and particularly in primary schools where it really starts. Now, when Dhruv speaks, please type in your comments and your questions in the comment box on the right hand side, and you don't have to wait for him to finish. Put it in straight away, and we'll put those questions with us, to him. And we've got Fong as well here, Fong Skogard, who's going to help with the questions when we go to that. This webinar is being recorded, and we will edit it and put it up on YouTube within the next, I hope, 48 hours, so then we can disseminate it to other people as well, and you can share it in the way that you might like to as well. Anyhow, Dhruv, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to you now to do your presentation on the SDGs and how they can be used in schools.
Right. Thanks, Francis. And my name is Dhruv Patel. I am the CEO of Nisai Group. And one of the things which has really been quite interesting for me is the SDGs and how we can use SDGs in creating our 21st century learners. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to try and show you how I got involved in these areas and what we are looking at doing. So I'm going to do share my screen. So first of all, just to give you a little bit about what the Nisai Group is about, we're promoting new digital competencies for 21st century schools. I think one of the challenges we have in the UK and elsewhere where I've been is that the schools have become exam factories. And what we have been seeing is how we can get the youngsters to come out of the school system and universities or vocational system as 21st century, because we don't know what the jobs are going to be for them, waiting for them for the next 5 to 10, 15 years. So I think we need to equip these youngsters with some really good skills. So just a little bit of background. I think one of the things is that what we have done is we brought technology. The reason why we're using technology for education is it allows us to bring the learner in the middle of the learning process. And also the technology, if you use it effectively, it can make it more affordable, it can make it more accessible, it can approach what I would call digital marginalized learners to learners who are not even socially or both academic and also displaced learners. So it's quite a good way of reaching out and getting out there at an affordable price. So let's talk about UNESCO. I came on the UNESCO when I was doing a presentation out in Asia Pacific in 2016, and they just decided that they're going to have this to transform our world. Now, it was quite interesting to see that first thing on the agenda of the goals was no poverty. 2 was zero hunger. 3, good health and well-being. 4, quality education. 5, gender equality. If you look at all of these 17 goals, the underlying thread which goes into that is education, right? If you educate the people, then they will be looking at the poverty and this hunger, and all those are all related. When you talk about decent work and growth, economic growth, skills are required in there. If you're talking about reducing inequalities, again, you've got to bring affordable education. Sustainable cities and communities. Why do we need to build big schools? Why can't we build community schools, which looks after the community scale requirements? Climate action, life below water, life on land. All of this can be brought into education, because the education is the one which will help people to find out how to bring it together. And again, if we look at these 17 goals, there are a lot of opportunities for us to give a really good understanding to our youngsters and become very good global citizens. So digital literacies, what we mean by digital literacy is enhancing learning by using different platforms. I mean, people can learn on through use of mobile, through use of tablets, through use of things. But those people who are living in islands or in remote areas where there's no internet, what do you call about that, right? How do you get to them? How do you actually, and those are the ones who are most vulnerable in those areas. So if you're living in an island in Asia Pacific, if you get a monsoon or if you get a typhoon, within very quickly your schools are finished and they're gone. So what do? You already again have an area of unemployment coming through. So it's very important that digital literacy is spread around, and it's just not kept to a small groups, but it has to be shared out. So it's very important that we make that a major area of focus. The program successful Incheon Declaration said, right, no education target should be considered met unless met by all. So how do we go out and reach out? Okay, you have lots of areas in the world where elementary and primary schools are free. But then if you look at the dropouts, there's huge dropouts. How do we take the school to them and then not to walk 5 miles or 10 kilometers to a school? Why should we not use the technology and take the school to them and the classroom? So that is something which we should really now think about it. You need to look at creative education, and also which are inclusive. Inclusive is one of the objectives in that. So what are the 21st century competencies? We call it the 4 C's, and it was created by the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. The 4 C's define and illustrate skills and knowledge. Critical thinking. We kick the critical thinking out of our students at year 6 and year 7. 5, 6, 7, we kick it out. When they're primary, they're thinking, they're actually creating, they're dreaming, they're doing things, right? They're taking risks. But that's because we want them to go into secondary school, we then focus them on English, maths, and science. Okay. Communications, we're not even getting that communication and working with each other. Collaborations, that's a skill which we need. And more important, creativity. Creativity is, I'm not talking about just drawing things. I'm talking about creating solutions, which is what they will need when they come to see if their role or their job suddenly disappears or is taken over by technology or artificial intelligence. So it's very important that we have these 4 C's, thinking with them in there. So critical thinking is fundamental to 21st century learning. It's one of the 3 foundational skills to make workplace success, because I mean, without that, I think we are actually, again, producing exam factories of students who just know how to pass exams, but they can't think outside the box. So I think it's important that we bring that. Communications, information literacy is important, very, very important. Many of the secondary university students lack the necessary competence and relevant sources of information. They can't even analyze, they can't even look at and compare and contrast, which is very, very important in the today's workplace and what's coming up in the future. So communication, as I said, has to be embedded, including what kind of media, ICT, verbal, oral, written, has to be effective. If we don't, we will not be able to communicate ideas and influence people. I think it's important that students get to know that at an early age. Collaborations, working in teams, working together to find solutions, working at a distance, collaborating at a distance, this is what is required by the new 21st century. Again, people are working from home now. How can they collaborate working from home and in the office or different parts of the world? It's a connected world. So again, that is going to be very critical for our youngsters to get that skill very quickly on. Creativity, as it says in the tin, very important. They need to be creative. People think creativity is just about drawings and art and all that, but no, it's about thinking solutions, creating new ideas, innovating stuff, making things happen, right? And I think, again, because we do not believe in people making mistakes in our school system, they're afraid to make mistakes there. And if you don't make a mistake, you can't learn. Learning is through mistakes as well. But I think we are frightening our students, saying you cannot make a mistake. So I think it's important that we look at that. So the other area is we got to educate, and we need to think about the three pedagogical principles. Personalization. Learning shouldn't be one size fits all. It should be driven by the learner, but still focus on meeting the targets. Participation. Encourage project-based learning where students lead and actively engage in ideas. Again, taking SDGs together, you could create some amazing project-based learning. Productivity, continuous and professional development for teachers and encouraging lifelong learning. Because again, if you allow the learners these skills, the 4Cs, they will learn for their life, in their life, as lifelong learners. So I think it's critical for us to make them independent learners. So just give you some case studies and putting it into practice, how we do it. So with our disengaged groups, excluded from mainstream, we use number of provisions like in primary education, libraries, museums, community centers. We allow our learners where they have never been to a library, can go and visit a library or go and visit a museum, and they can learn within that, and they can actually see what's out there. Home education, second provision of secondary education, our homes, again, young offenders. We are using the technology, we are using blended learning, and we are delivering all that through this. Okay, island, in remote island, primary school, 2-school area, delivering key stage 3 and 4. Again, vocational and those, we are having more and more in there. Displaced group, we work with students and mothers in Australia from here, right? ESOL, booster classes, that's done through using technology. So again, what I'm trying to show you is that it can be done without the cost of trying to set it up somewhere else. It can be done online as well. You got the 4 groups here, you got Daniel here, you got Molly. They're all different, but they have the same thing common in that they were not in school. So one of our new stuff which we've done, last year we acquired a private public school in September, and the objective of that, which is 5 to 19, is to put the 4 C's into practice. Create a school, create an education place where we can make affordable private education. In that, change the curriculum to make that into 21st century learning, right? Because if we start at the age of 5 in primary school and bring in some real solid core learning around the projects, I think we will get them what we want them to be in the future. We also got our Skills Academy, which takes them into traineeships and apprenticeships as well. So I'm just going to show you, right, this is our new innovation. So we got, in the primary school, we have face-to-face academic subjects going on, and the 4 C's being embedded. We also have face-to-face pastoral care. They're actually working together, they're doing art, they're playing hopscotch, they're playing games, which I used to play when I was young. And I learned a lot from that. You know, rather than sitting and seeing children working on a mobile or a smartphone, they should be able to learn that. Secondary school, in our key stage 3 and 4 in Lamas, core academic subjects are studied online. Forces are embedded through using UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals. And we have what we call tutors on the ground who are actually helping them to build projects and that. At year 10, they decide whether they want to go to university or academic, and we then move them into that stream, or if they want to do vocational, then we give them a vocational stream as well. And they can go there. And the end game is a job, whether you go through apprenticeship or university, you end up having a job. So this is our new way of delivering what I call, in a way, achieving our 21st century skills. The outcomes for this, progression of pathways are further education, higher education, technical and vocational. If we say to the youngster at year 10, look, it doesn't matter whether, if you want to go to university, you still need to get a job. To get a job, you can do two routes, either university or vocational. It's not one or the other. You can do both if you want to. So you've got to get the right kind of careers. You've got to get the information to that at year 10, so they can decide what they want to do and how they're going to engage in moving themselves forward. And again, they need to make a difference. They want to make a difference themselves for their lives. So in Node, we are actually offering high quality experience implementation to support targets to meet sustainable development goals for education. And I think, as I said in my first session a few minutes ago, that the education and skills are cover all the 17 objectives. They go through all the 17 objectives. So if you use it effectively, you can cover 17 objectives by getting education in that. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me, and I hope you found that useful.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Yeah, that was really useful. And if people would like to put up their comments or questions, please do. Can I just go through a few things to get some things clear? When we talk about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, you're doing two things really. You're actually, in the way you deliver education, are showing how education, one of the goals, can be sustainable. And by creating a global audience of people who want to learn with the right digital literacy, what you're doing, or you not, what you're doing is you're providing a model of sustainable development in education.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. Because I mean, we should not be the whole SDG should be coming from within the person. It should be their basic, it should be something coming out of that: the respect, the gender equality, inclusion, the stuff for looking after our climate, looking after our environment. That should be coming from within, not as forced into us. So the youngsters coming at 5, learning all these things through play and learning about it, I think it's got to make a big difference.
So you're looking at how you can develop a sustainable education way of doing things. But the second thing it seems to me you're saying is that because of interconnectivity nowadays, and things are global, and people around the world don't have to be in the same classroom, the SDGs are a good model to work with to show how that can happen.
And that's right, because we are just, I mean, I'm going out, next week to Philippines, where we are just working with a school, which is a primary school, again, a through school from 5 to, in fact, I've got a kindergarten there to 19, and we're working with them together to bring in our curriculum, what we have developed, so they can actually work with us, and we can then get them working on the same kind of projects, and then we'll be sharing those projects. And in fact, we've got about 3 or 4 other schools wanting to join that route.
Okay. And Fong, do you want to come in with any questions? Or?
Yes, I would love to. 3 or 4 schools you just mentioned about, where are they from?
Right. So one is in Sri Lanka, right? Another one, a couple of them are in India, and 2 of them are in Thailand.
So you are focusing on that area, geographical area in Asia?
Currently, yeah, because I mean, Asia is where I saw a little bit more awareness of SDGs than anywhere else I've seen. I haven't seen much awareness of SDGs in Europe. In the UK, people hardly talk about it. Okay, the schools head teachers don't know about it. I mean, I think that BBC should be making a big thing about it, right? But sharing and talking about what SDGs, there are so many resources which could be used by schools. But I haven't, going around the country with my team, we have not heard head teachers understand what SDGs are, even in primary schools.
So in this country, how do you introduce SDGs into an environment where they don't even know what it means?
Well, I mean, this is where I think I spoke to somebody at BBC Education, and I suggested to them that, first of all, have you heard about SDGs? And I was told that not yet, but they're not yet got anything on that. So, we don't have much time. 2030 is the deadline. So I did suggest to them that they got so many resources, from that could be used by schools to develop some really wonderful projects. So that's maybe still thinking about, but I haven't seen. I've seen their stakeholder thing for this month in April, but it doesn't have that on it.
Okay, Fong, do you want to come in again?
Yes. So I see a question from Hannah. She has two questions. Number one is the learning language. When you are young, 3-4 years old, do you think it would be useful?
Oh yes, I think learning languages at an early age is quite good. I mean, just to give you my example, I'm married to a Japanese. My children learned Japanese when they were very young, right? And as they get older, my daughter still talks in Japanese. She used to speak Russian as well as part of her languages, but they were taught at a very early age, right? So I do agree with that. On the coding, I think it's good to do it start early, but I'm not sure. I mean, what that would do, but it is in another language. What we are looking at doing something, but not at. I think it'll be more like 8 or 9, because in Lamas they're not going to be playing with computers from between 5 and 7, right? They might use them for research, but not using it at 8, 9, 10. They start getting introduced, and that's where we do the blended learning. But the first 3-4 years of up to 7 to 8, we are not getting them to go on the computers.
Okay. Keith Morse, I think it is, has said that very many UN agencies tend to focus their efforts on towns and cities, which leads to the erosion of communities, and that doesn't lead to a very sustainable environment. Do you actually approach that, or have you noticed that, and do you ever approach that in the work that you do with schools and with communities?
Yes, one of the things which is, again, if you look at every Millennium Development Goal, Millennium Development Banks, like Asian Development Bank, World Bank, everyone talks about the biggest threat to us is the migration from rural areas to urban areas, okay? And while they're migrating from rural to urban areas, you're actually losing the bread basket, right? And then we have to bring the bread and food from elsewhere. If we are able to start building smaller schools and provide affordable education through the blended learning, blended approach like we're using, we can take this education, the classroom to the children. We can also create formalize the informal labor market, so they can get their self-esteem, they can get a good quality of that. But also what the technology allows them to do is, and I've spoken to time and time again with these aid agencies, that what they should be, every time I talk to them, I said, well, these people don't have internet. And I'm saying, well, this is straight away put a barrier to me. What you should be looking at is saying, right, okay, Mr. Telco, put a transmitter there. If you put a transmitter there as part of your CSR project, we will take the education there. We'll do the public health, because in a lot of these cases, they don't have that. They need to be educated in health, right? So you're doing that. And plus, what you're doing is you get them into banking, you can get into e-commerce, because you are taking a market to them. So if they've got something locally produced, they can actually get into Alibaba or PayPal or Amazon. So you are actually making them part of the system, ecosystem to produce, be more effective.
Okay.
So I do agree with that.
And Fong, do you have anything else?
Yes, I have two things. Number one is that from what age do you start talking to the children about jobs and career and
Right. So what we got
future?
at year 10, at 14, right, we're starting that. But I think earlier the better, because in our experience, what we're finding is that parents are also not aware of what jobs are there. So when you talk to people about construction, they think is digging a hole and putting brickwork up. Construction has changed so much. So if you call it built environment, there's a complete ecosystem in there, from building surveyors to design to facilities management to plumbing and electrics, and now they got fabrication. So there's a huge thing. You talk to them about food, they think it's kitchen and catering. No, food comes from water, food comes from land. How do you process it? There's lots of jobs and different jobs in that. Okay, so it is about getting a clear message to parents as well and the children that there is a lot more than reality TV.
Yeah. So if we go back to Lama School and the other office that you have two different schools, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are in the UK, and the children are going to the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is face to face.
Well, the thing is that these are two small units for us, right? The biggest number of our children are online.
Online. So what is the balance between doing it online and doing it face to face?
Right. So what with the second school in Nottingham, which is much more behavioral and more of youngsters who are basically school for the behavior. So our objective there is to look at putting to a personalized package of behavior, learning, and vocational with that, and then we get them into job place and job market. That's our goal there. In Lamas, it's slightly different. In Lamas, what we're trying to transform it into affordable school models, so we can take this Lamas model worldwide and provide education. Lamas is not going to be more than 250 seater. Okay, it's a through school, right? So keep it small, keep it nurturing, keep it more personalized. I think we'll get the outcomes we desire.
I mean, in the schools that given the people you deal with, people are often excluded, people have learning difficulties and so on. Do you think you're given more freedom to experiment and to be creative than teachers are in the formal system?
Yes. We are, and just to give you an example, in Lamas, which is a private school, we are working with the parents as well and asking them what kind of curriculum would you like to see, So in the early primary, we are actually now looking at completely overhauling the curriculum. It will meet the national standards, but will bring in more project-based working.
And do you think that really has lessons that could be learnt by the formal system, that rather you adopting what the formal system does, you're developing a type of or approach to education that the formal system should itself be considering?
I hope so. I mean, I hope they do, because I mean, like I say, that exam factories, right, are not the answer what we need for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we did a meeting a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, in fact, in Conway Hall, where we streamed in an interview from the ex-Minister of Education in Finland. And Finland is a country which has basically got rid of exams and works in groups and works more collaboratively. But in this country, it's an uphill struggle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, again, we are teaching our children not to make a mistake, right? Okay, so if you look at the number of high anxiety and mental health and those, because children are not allowed to be children, they're not allowed to be making mistakes. How do you learn without making mistakes? We all make mistakes and we're learning from it. But if you're not allowed to make a mistake and you're supposed to pass all the time, hey, something's gonna give.
Yeah, David Lester says this sounds great because it looks like you're concentrating on the child's needs and putting that first, rather just hitting minimum requirements. And I mean, you talk about personalized education. So really you focus on the needs of the child, yeah, and then work a custom form of education around that.
Yeah. And that's why having Lamas as our first small school, and again, the one in Subic in Philippines, which we're working actively, is no more than, it will be about 250-seater school, okay? And it's within the community. So the community will look after themselves, and the community will make sure it works.
The Lama school is kind of far away from Cambridge. It is just so the children going to the school, they have to be local.
Well, right now we get children coming in from, say, 10 to 15 mile radius, okay? Right? But, it's nothing stopping us to do something different, right? Just to give you an example, Phong. Okay, so in Nottingham, we're working with Sea Cadets, the charity Sea Cadets. So in the morning and during up to 2:30, some of our students will be going there, okay, where we will be providing them, in the afternoon, they'll be, in the morning, they'll be online, in the afternoon, they'll go to Sea Cadets, right, or, vice versa, to do some project work, they'll do resilience, they'll do team building, right, they'll work together, yes, okay. But we are using Sea Cadet as something, and in fact, I was told today, in another part of the place, they want us to use the fire service, fire department, fire station to bring students there, okay. So, the traditional schools, breaks and buildings, you can make it as flexible as you want.
Yeah. No, I just try to understand exactly how it works. So when people are asking, I can answer the question. I have a friend who has a son who is autistic, and he is from Cambridge, and he can't go to one of your schools. No. But the mother is not keen to have him at home or going online school, because then the mother feels like that he is not going out to see other kids. So that's why I asked you about the balance. How about the balance with the kid, and also how about to build a relationship with the parents when you are online?
Right. Okay. So you know what, and I think we need to show how it works. But we have got online. We have communities, things like book reading, debating club. These are all secure communities where the children come together. We also have quite a large number of our percentage are in autistic spectrum, okay? And I think what they get is their self-esteem. They get their own private place because they're sitting there with their headset and they're discussing. They don't have the noise level. Parents have got more access to us because the parents will know how their students are doing, because they've got that portal where they can go and see how many times, what's his attendance, what's the contribution, what's the assignments, okay, and how well they're doing. They've got access to the teachers, in the office hours, they can call. The students have also got house groups, and there's a pastoral care as well. So there's a lot more support than you would get in a traditional school. And all our teachers are SEN trained as well.
In a way, you're doing what the people in Newcastle are doing as well, aren't you? You're developing what they call a self-organized learning environment, which is a collaborative approach where the teacher is no longer the person who teaches, but it's the inspiration. He's a catalyst, she's a catalyst to get children to teach themselves.
Well, we have that structure, but what we're doing within the Learning Hub and Lamas is we might give them the theoretical thing on the morning, but in the afternoon they can take that and put into projects, and then they can drive whichever way they want to go. Okay, that's where you pull the creative thinking and critical thinking for them.
No, I think it is great. I spoke to my friend today, and she has problem with her child, so she couldn't dial in, even though she wanted to. So if a person who would like to understand a little bit more about a school, they think that the internet website is not that clear. So would it be possible to book a time with one of your staff and talk through how it works? Because those children, they are very different.
Yeah. Well, what we do two things. One is that if we can go and visit them and show it on live. The other thing is that if the parent and the child also wants to go online, they'll book in a time and we'll have somebody actually doing a complete live show they'll do the live tour of the academy. And just to give you an example, where we've now done, I'm going out to Ho Chi Minh City I'm there in the 6th and 7th, right? And we've been doing live tours and remote tours from here to colleges, and they didn't have to come to us. And they've said, and now they're saying, right, we want IGCSEs and A levels, right, from here. Okay, so we can set that up. It's not no problem.
Does that mean your system is sort of self-expanding? You don't have to depend upon the resources that the traditional class-based system school does. So if Phong had 100 friends who were interested in being educated in the way that you offer that education, you could actually cope with that. You could adapt to that more easily than the formal system could.
Yes, because if you think about it, if you see the BBC website, BBC News yesterday's, where they said the number of homeschooling and number of what they call exclusions have gone up, right? Okay, where some of the homeschooling, which is formal homeschooling, which is there, but then there's schooling which parents have been asked to take the children off because they're coming to that census data. So you have a lot more children who are actually home educated, where parents have not got the abilities to do it. Okay. So in that kind of scenario, before they do that, they should talk to us and we would provide that education. And some of the schools which we work with, they do that very, very well. And in fact, we've got 2 or 3 schools in Cambridge who are really working with us well.
Peter says the way you seem to be he calls a co-creation way of working. Is that how you would describe it as well? I mean, the collaboration is part of the co-creation. It's working together. It's realizing that people are equal partners. There's not a hierarchy there.
Yeah, because I mean, and then that's a new way of working now. Even in our corporate work or anything, it's a new way of working together.
Can you tell us a kind of a story of what's happening with those countries when you are traveling? What are they looking for, and what can you do for English children?
Right. So in the countries where I'm traveling to, the biggest change is happening is that part of the things that are coming up, like in Philippines, one of the projects we're looking at is dropouts. They got a large number of dropouts. So we're looking at seeing how we can actually bring that back into on track into education and skills, because they've got a large number of needs there. In Thailand, we got a number of private schools, which are Thai schools, who want to improve their English. So we have actually we started with 20, and in May we have about 400 students joining us online. So in the morning they'll go into Thai, in the afternoon and extended hours they'll come to us. Okay. In Vietnam and in Japan, we're also looking at doing the same thing. In Japan, we got some number of schools starting a pilots with us. And again, it's IGCSEs and A levels in English, right? So that's something which is coming up. In UK, we are focusing right now on more on skills, on working with schools, early intervention, so they don't kick the children out. We want to work with them. We are also looking at short-term reprieve, short-term, so, rather than having what do you call it, that they can actually have children for short time and give them space before they'll go back to mainstream. So, so it's breaking that cycle of long-term exclusion is what we're looking at doing now.
David Lester says that lots of schools do not encourage the skills of independent learning, and it seems to him, and he works in education for local authorities, seems to him that's what you're actually doing. But I mean, because you do a great deal of your work online, and you realize that you can reach more people online and you can reach them from any part of the world, you said in your presentation, it's very, very important for there to be digital literacy. There has to be digital skills. So in a way, when you have such a worldwide audience of children, how do you go about ensuring there is those digital skills, and how do you start them having that as your sort of stage one of what you do?
Well, the biggest challenge you have, Francis, is not the young children, it's the adults. Okay. So once the children get onto it, our system is quite intuitive. But more importantly, it is about, like, for example, we teach them how to use email. They think by doing texting, that's email. It's not. We teach them email. While working online with us, thereby the fact they're working with us online, they're actually using the tool sets which they will be using in the future, right? So we're trying to get them job ready. We don't have to tell them, look, this is Word, this is Excel, this is PowerPoint. They're actually using that, right? Okay, so they are getting that digital literacy, but you know, they are coming as users. They might not be coding, they might be not writing programs. There's a different subsets of skills, but at least this way, they're looking at the other thing which we're giving them is when we say to them, right, okay, go and do a research, they're actually getting them to research, we're getting them to look at independent skills in that as well, right? So the learning is happening all the time, right? And the digital literacy, even if you like this, it is digital literacy.
So, I mean, many of the young people you're saying do have some sort of digital literacy to start with because they use their mobiles, they're texting, and you take that as a base and then move on from that because they've got the sort of digital understanding,
yeah,
even if they don't know about email and Word and Excel.
But the other thing we also do when we are on, and even in the UK, we have we train even in the schools the mentors, right? Okay, so they can support the children. So out in the outside in various countries we're working, one of the main thing is supporting and training the local people. So we're actually putting a system in place because you know it's about changing and it's about change of what do you call it, behavior, because this is a different way of learning.
So what you're doing in a way fits very well into achieving, you know, good education, which is one of the SDGs, and,
yeah.
and you're an example of good practice in doing that. But going back to the whole of the SDGs, which you use to try and get people to think about all of those different items, poverty, climate change, and so on, you talked about, again in your presentation, the importance of people realizing they're global citizens.
Yeah.
And you have people from all over the world. So how do you go about doing that? How do you get them to sort of take on board, have an ownership that they're a part of a globe?
Well, this is why we're starting. That's the main change of curriculum we're developing for the new year in 28. And we are actually working with this the Filipino head teacher, right? And our people are working together so we can bring two sides. Now, if you think about the school in Subic, it's in a beautiful part of the world where you got the river on one side, the sea on one side, you got the rainforest, you got natural habitats, and then you got our school in the middle of a Mansfield, right, or Nashville, right, where they don't even see those. Yes. So how do you bring those students or young learners to say, right, this is how we're going to be doing things? Yes. So the curriculum needs to be different to bring in, and this is why I'm saying that if we can get somebody like BBC, there goes so many resources, things like that. Yes, you know, and it does make a sense. You see. And that's what Keith is thinking. Yeah, I agree with Keith.
Yeah, no, I mean, Keith is about, he's just said that now, he's agreeing with you as well. Yeah, I mean, Phong, do you want to take anything else up?
Do you have any I success story? Do you have any success story lately?
Yeah, actually, one of our students, he had ME and he couldn't get into school and he had lost quite a number of years. He joined us and to do GCSEs and he was successful at GCSEs. He improved, he went to the college and he sent us after just after Christmas or just before Christmas. He sent us a very good letter saying, "Hi, my name is this. I've been at your without you, I would not have been able to do law at York University and came first. Came first class. Yeah, and that was amazing story, and it's on our website actually, right? But that was a really, really amazing story that, out of the blue, he says, "Look, what you've done for me,"
Yes. So what do you think that you would give to the people today listening on this webinar? What can they take away from this webinar?
I think what they should take away from this webinar that I think SDGs are very, very critical for all of us. And in fact, the gray-haired people like me and Francis have a lot to do about it. Right? We have to make sure our young people are, I've got 3 grandchildren and I need to leave a legacy, and that's not called money. It's called societal impact, right? And they need to have a place to live in, right? Which is nice, right? The weather, no climatic change and all that stuff, right? So we have to do something. And if you don't do that now, right, then there's nothing for them. So yes, the takeaway for me is a lot more people need to understand SDGs. We need to have something going behind it. The schools need to know about it. Yeah, and the other thing is that what we just talked about, our own, as somebody said to me today from India, she said, and she's from the Cambridge International people, she said, what she didn't realize, what we are is a fully extended school online. Okay? And that's the difference. We're not a virtual school, we are a proper school, but online.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, I never thought I had grey hair, but I probably do. But the other thing you talked a lot about is critical thinking. And that becomes vital in what you do, doesn't it? And in a way, that's the very antithesis of what the formal system does. It doesn't get people to think outside the box. It wants them to think in the box. And how important is that for you to cultivate that sort of approach, to get people to have the courage to take the risk, to get outside the box in their thinking?
Okay, so what I did, I met somebody, and there's a company called Thinking Skills International in the UK, and what they do, they try to, and we've just become partners with that. What they do is they bring the thinking into the curriculum, not as an afterthought, right? And I always felt that we were doing that, but we were not formalizing it. So I met up with Richard in, the place I met him was in Philippines, right? At an Asian Development Bank seminar, right? And I said, what are you doing? He said, thinking. So I said, what are you thinking? He told me. The thing is that when you look at how we deliver curriculum, right, currently, we are not giving them, we're not extending their, we just say, yeah, that's right, and go to the next topic. We're not getting them to explore where they should be looking at, how we can extend, whether if they learn some piece of work, how do they contextualize in a different thing? Yes. Okay. And that's the key element. 2 plus 2 is 4, but 2 plus 2 in something else is also going to be 4, but in a different context, right?
Yeah, so I mean, critical thinking then becomes an essential part of what you do, and collaborative working is also important, you said, and that means students working together rather than the teacher coming in and being the authority figure. Is that correct?
Yeah, because right now we have things like breakout rooms in our system. So we could have a breakout room between 3 students from, one from Thailand, one from London, one from, say, Philippines. And they're working from their homes and they're sharing the same resources together. And the teacher's watching them doing it. And just come in when they want to come in. Right?
Yeah. It is very ideal, Dhruv. It is very difficult to get people to get to the stage that they would have that discipline to do the work and to ensure that what they want to get out of it.
If you think about it, right, our student at a home or anywhere, first of all, in a classroom, they sit in the classroom and the teacher shuts the door and that's it. I say to my teacher, whenever I employ a teacher and I interview them, I said, our student has got the most powerful finger. They switch off button. So as soon as they've logged in, they become a stakeholder in the learning. They become independent. They have that esteem. If my teachers then take them on a journey, you drop them very quickly. Okay? So the learner is taking the responsibility of learning by the fact they've logged in.
Yes. So a boy of a 10 years old boy who is autistic logging into the system, and you think that when he log in, he feels like he takes responsibility for his life.
Yeah. Yeah. He needs to be shown, because once he buys into it and once he likes it, he will love it. But he
Oh,
needs,
yeah. So that's the point. He likes it. So
yeah.
so when he buys in, so that's where it goes. So when you say when he signs up, so it's him who signs up, not his mom.
Yeah, he has to be, exactly. It's the learner, right? It's the learner who's got to make the decision. He's the learner who's going to be the part of the journey, not the mom is a supporting actor. Yeah.
It is kind of communication. You know, it is quite difficult to make sure that mom doesn't make the decision. It is the boy who makes the decision himself.
Yeah, and we get that. We get that. We go there, and what I mean, I can give you examples, and I'll get somebody to speak to you about it. But we go there, we go to the parents' house, and the parents says, well, they want to engage. Fine, okay. They open that machine, they show it, they log in, and then somebody from Stockton office does some things. They say, right, okay, write on a whiteboard. They write on a whiteboard. They do cross and circles. They play a game, right? We have got engagement.
But it's also important to engage the parents so that they feel secure about it as well.
Exactly.
You were saying earlier the parents are the problem, not the kids. So you obviously have some emphasis on the parents as well.
No, we do. We like the parents' involvement, but I think sometimes the parents can be protective, right? Especially when they've got a young person like that. What you are doing here is you're actually showing them that it can be done, right? And we have found 9 out of 10 times if the son or the daughter gets onto the system, the parents are behind it 100%.
But I think one of the things you just said, which Fong was sort of drawing you to say, is that the fact that you're encouraging active learning, and that the digital world enables a student to be active alone and then create a community, rather than be in a community which has got to be controlled to keep it controlled. And that is a sort of revolutionary way of doing things, isn't it? And I think that's probably what's new about your approach and those who use that sort of approach as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because I mean, I think it's more, it is something which is, we've been doing this now for nearly 17 years now, okay? And we are evolving. We have not, I think we're continuously learning, we're continuously modifying things, and the thing like the SDGs came out in 2016 and we're already starting to make headway on it, right? And I think it's about thinking, and it's about looking at what's coming along, right? Okay, we don't know what's coming along, and that's the fact, right? The technology advances are coming along. If you've got driverless cars, then who's going to be driving Ubers? What's going to happen to all those drivers? What's going to, if they don't bring food on the table, what's going to happen?
I like your attitude. You don't know what's going to happen, but you just try to prepare your children. I mean, the children, not just your children, the best you can to equip them with what is going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And Peter also said here about legacy.
Yeah. I mean, this is it. We got so much resources out there. Really there. BBC's got it. All the like Open University, all of them have it. British Library has it. We need to harness it.
Okay, so I mean, what you're doing is really quite incredible, and a lot of people I think will be interested in what you're doing. I mean, for their own personal reasons, for their own children as well. And we're coming to the end of this, but just before we finish, maybe you could tell us if anyone wanted to find out more about what you're doing, and maybe you can help their child and they want to get involved in some way. Where would they go to? How would they find out?
Well, if they went to our website and went into and just either do a pure chat or chat, somebody will come back to them in within 24 hours, apart from a weekend. But they will be there. They'll talk them through it, right? And Fong, in your friend's case, one of our people can come and see her if she's interested to test it out. And there's nothing wrong with it. Next time one of our guys comes to visit the Cambridge schools, you can come in, and also we can give you the references of the schools which we're working in.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I can talk to you offline, but Peter, he has a question about cross control. So is it beneficial?
Oh yeah, I can give you really good examples on it. Can you imagine? We have right now students from Dubai and UK in the same school, or at one time, just to give a much better example, we have students from this Isle of Sark, and we had a couple of years ago we got some really children from Birmingham who were a bit difficult, right? So when they were on the whiteboard, they were talking about what's very Sark, and so this girl was saying, well, the Sark is an island, so she drew the island and Sark up there, right? So what's in there? So he said, well, I live in Birmingham. So what do you do? So we just go and sometimes nick the caps of the car. So what is a car? Yeah, we don't have cars here. So the guy says, are you taking the mickey out of me? Huh? And he writes that on. Right? And this banter goes on, and it's recorded with us, and it's fantastic. And the teacher was just watching this banter. You could see that they were sharing, and it was interesting because somebody saying this, and we never had that practice. The girl never knew what they just got bicycles and cart and horse, right? No cars, so she didn't know what a car looked like, kind of thing.
That's a really good example of how people do learn from each other, and through fun and banter, there's a lot of learning. Anyhow, we've come to 8 o'clock now, so we're going to have to finish. I will send out a link to your website to everyone when I send out the link to the webinar as well. But thank you, Dhruv, for doing that. Thank you for the questions as well from all of you who took part, and the issues that you raised. It's been really good. So I think it's been a really informative webinar of a very innovative way of approaching education, which could have a huge impact on our formal system, which desperately needs changing. So thanks to you for joining us today, and thank you for doing the webinar with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll end the webinar now.